Have you ever noticed that some of the most powerful people in the room are often the quietest? While others are competing for attention, talking endlessly about themselves, there's always that one person who observes, listens, and speaks only when it truly matters. And why do people often respect him more than the loudest voice in the room? This isn't about being shy or antisocial. This is about intentional silence, strategic communication, and a psychological profile that reveals deep confidence and intelligence. Let's explore what science and psychology tell us about the quiet man. The man who doesn't talk too much isn't withholding words because he is insecure or lacks confidence. Actually, it's quite the opposite. Research in social psychology shows that people who speak less, but with purpose, are often perceived as more competent, trustworthy, and intelligent. Think about this. In a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, silence becomes powerful. When a quiet man finally speaks, people lean in, they listen. His words carry weight because they're rare, considered, and meaningful. From a psychological standpoint, men who practice verbal restraint often display several key characteristics. First, they possess high levels of self-awareness. They understand that not every thought needs to be vocalized. They've mastered the art of internal processing, filtering what's important from what's merely reactive. Second, they demonstrate emotional regulation. Studies in behavioral psychology show that people who pause before speaking have better control over their emotions. They're not slaves to impulsive reactions. They think, then respond. Third, they exhibit what psychologists call high cognitive load tolerance. This means they're comfortable sitting with complexity, ambiguity, and silence. They don't need to fill every gap in conversation with noise. Here is something fascinating. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who speak approximately 30 to 40% less than the average person in group settings are often rated as more likable and more influential. Why? Because when they do speak, their contributions are substantive, not just social filler. The quiet man understands something crucial. In communication, quality always trumps quantity. While others are preparing their next comment, the man who doesn't talk too much is doing something far more valuable. He's observing. He's reading body language. He's noticing what people don't say. He's identifying patterns in conversations that reveal true intentions, hidden emotions, and unspoken dynamics. Research in nonverbal communication tells us that approximately 65 to 75% of all communication is nonverbal. The quiet man has an unfair advantage because he is paying attention to the complete picture while others are focused only on words. There's an old saying, knowledge is power, but the quiet man knows a deeper truth. Understanding is power, and understanding comes from observation, not talking. They gather information while others reveal themselves. Think about the most successful negotiators, leaders, and strategists throughout history. Many of them were known for being measured, thoughtful, and economical with their words. They understood that silence is not empty, it's full of information. Neuroscience research shows that when we're speaking, we're primarily using the language production centers of our brain. But when we're quietly observing, we can engage multiple cognitive processes simultaneously: analysis, pattern recognition, emotional intelligence, and strategic thinking. Now, let's address a common misconception. Some people assume that quiet men are shy, insecure, or socially anxious. Sometimes that's true, but we're not talking about that type of quiet. We're talking about the man who is quiet by choice, by strategy, by principle. True confidence is quiet, insecurity is loud. This isn't just a motivational quote, it's backed by psychological research. Studies on narcissism and self-esteem show that people who constantly need to talk about themselves, their achievements, and their opinions often score lower on genuine self-esteem measures. They're seeking external validation through words. The quiet man doesn't need that validation. His sense of self is internally defined, not externally constructed. Attachment theory in psychology provides another interesting lens. People with secure attachment styles, those who are comfortable with themselves and their relationships, tend to communicate less anxiously. They don't over-explain, overshare, or constantly seek reassurance through conversation. The quiet man often demonstrates this secure attachment. He's comfortable with silence because he's comfortable with himself. Here's something powerful. The quiet man often has the strongest presence in the room. Why? Because presence isn't about volume, it's about centeredness, groundedness, and authentic self-expression. When you're not constantly trying to prove yourself through words, people feel your genuine energy. They sense your confidence. They respect your self-containment. Almost every wisdom tradition throughout history has emphasized the value of restraint in speech. The ancient Stoic philosophers believed that speaking less was a sign of wisdom and self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Eastern philosophies have similar teachings. In Taoism, there's a principle that those who know do not speak, and those who speak do not know. Modern psychology has caught up with this ancient wisdom. Research on decision-making shows that people who practice verbal restraint make fewer impulsive decisions and have fewer regrets about what they've said. The quiet man operates with what we might call a mental filter. Before words leave his mouth, they pass through several checkpoints. Is this true? Is this necessary? Is this kind? Is this the right time? Will this add value? This isn't overthinking, it's wisdom. And this filter protects him from the countless verbal mistakes that others make daily. There's another practical aspect to talking less: energy conservation. Every interaction, every conversation, every debate costs mental and emotional energy. The quiet man is selective about where he invests his energy. He doesn't waste it on meaningless arguments, gossip, or trying to convince people who aren't ready to be convinced. This selective investment means he has more energy for what truly matters: his goals, his family, his personal growth, and his meaningful relationships. Human psychology is attracted to mystery. We're drawn to what we don't fully understand, to what isn't completely revealed. The man who doesn't talk too much naturally creates this mystery. People want to know what he's thinking. They're curious about his opinions, his experiences, his inner world. This isn't manipulation, it's simply the natural result of restraint. And this curiosity often translates into respect, interest, and influence. Some of the most effective leaders in history were known for their listening skills more than their speaking ability. They understood that leadership isn't about having all the answers, it's about asking the right questions and creating space for others to contribute. When a leader talks less, team members feel more valued. They have room to express themselves, to grow, to take ownership. The quiet man, whether he's leading a team or navigating a relationship, creates this space. And people appreciate him for it. People tend to trust those who listen more than those who talk constantly. Why? Because good listeners demonstrate that they value others, that they're not just waiting for their turn to speak. The quiet man builds trust through his attentive silence. People feel heard around him, they feel seen, and that creates deep, lasting connections. Now, let me be clear, this isn't about never speaking. The quiet man isn't mute, he's not avoiding communication. He's simply mastered the art of intentional speech. He knows when to speak and when to listen. He understands that silence is sometimes the most powerful response. In a world that rewards the loudest voice, the man who doesn't talk too much stands out through contrast. His psychology reveals deep confidence, strategic intelligence, emotional maturity, and genuine self-worth. These aren't traits you can fake with words, they're demonstrated through presence, through action, and yes, through selective silence. So the next time you encounter a man who doesn't talk too much, don't mistake his silence for weakness or disinterest. Understand that you are in the presence of someone who has mastered one of life's most difficult skills, knowing when words add value and when silence speaks louder. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, let me know in the comments. And remember, your words have power. Use them wisely.